See you later, Seishin. Well, it's so nice to be together. We were in California last week. I missed you. On the computer, we have Elizabeth and Joan and Chris Blake and Kata and Pamelia. Hi, guys. And it's a pretty good crew here on a rainy night in the basement of a church. Nice, especially to see some old friends I haven't seen for a minute. Hi, Nick. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. And we have a distinguished visitor from Great Vow Zen Monastery. Hi, Mulesho. How are you? Good to see you. And all the distinguished personages who are here regularly are equally wonderful. And so happy to see Kandore taking advantage of your new neighborhood. Has a Zendo in it. Yeah, wonderful. And here we are, trying to figure it out. What are we trying to figure out? That's what we're trying to figure out. Let me know when you do. I got another impressive little newsletter from the homeless services educator Ryan Dowd I want to share as a short subject. I don't know that if he has a spiritual practice besides having been involved his whole adult life in serving unhoused people. He's learned from that, I guess. He wrote, the title of the newsletter was, "All Souls Have Wounds." And he wrote, "I've never met a person who didn't have wounds on their soul. True, some souls have a few faded scars, while others are crisscrossed with layers of gangrenous pain. But all souls have wounds. Forgive my language, but the saying, 'time heals all wounds,' is bullshit. It's no more true than time cures all cancer. It's fortune cookie wisdom and bad advice. No, time doesn't heal wounds, kindness does. And just like cruelty, kindness is bi-directional. Acts of kindness heal the receiver and the giver. Such is the human condition, and while we have little control over the kindness of others, we have control over our kindness to others. But I have bad news. It takes only a little cruelty to cause someone and yourself a lifetime of pain. When you were 13 years old, you tossed a hurtful comment at a classmate. You forgot it moments later, but they still carry it with them. They still carry it with them in the insecurities it helped cause. Kindness helps the wound of cruelty, but it also is asymmetrical. To put it simply, it takes a lot of kindness to heal a little cruelty. Such is the human condition. I don't know the mathematical equation for kindness and cruelty, but it takes at least hundreds of acts of kindness to heal a single act of cruelty. Another way to think about it, kindness is a balm that has to be reapplied every day. And then he has a PS. Not convinced? And he includes a research link. Research suggests that being kind to others might be more effective at reducing anxiety and depression than therapy. I'll put the link in the talk notes if you're interested. I didn't look at the study. So we'll just have to keep practicing applying the balm of kindness, huh? Forever. That's really the Bodhisattva work. So a few schedule notes. This will be our last Thursday of the year. We'll take next week off for the holidays. And I'm really excited about the next in-person event. We're going to revive our New Year's Eve ceremony. I was trying to wait till the temple was ready, but I couldn't wait any longer. It's been enough years. And the large room that'll be our multi-purpose kind of room, dining room, classroom, we're calling Cloud Hall. Actually, that's not really getting ripped up in the construction, so we can clean that up and do it there. Do sign up if you haven't, so we know how many people to try to set up for, and do bring cushions. I can't remember if it says on the website stuff to bring cushions. Bring BYOC. And then we'll start the Thursdays again on January 2nd, so we can just keep practicing our kindness. And Dogen, as you know, was interested in everyday practice. He was never quite as direct or obvious as Ryan Dowd or maybe I am. But it really was his main concern. How do we make everything practice? Or probably more accurately, how do we understand that everything already is practice, nothing that we have to make? I know Chris talked about his wonderful essay last week, Valley Sounds and Mountain Colors. Here's another one that's more or less accessible and happily short. But even a short chapter by Dogen and Shobogenzo, I notice I can only really talk about one page to get a whole talk, so this is just actually the beginning of this short one. But it's a festival called Kajo, which translates more or less to everyday activity or everyday matters. It starts out this way. In the domain of Buddha ancestors, drinking tea and eating rice are everyday activity. Drinking tea and eating rice has been transmitted for a long time and is present now. Thus, the Buddha ancestors' vital activity of drinking tea and eating rice comes to us. Maybe that's not what you expected to hear from Dogen. Tea and rice. So tea and rice, because drinking tea and eating rice are so darn normal, full on, everyday, maybe boring activities in Japanese life. So it's a little small barrier for us that it sounds a little bit exotic and sounds Japanese, tea and rice. So I translated it for us this way. In the domain of Buddha ancestors, eating a bagel and drinking coffee are everyday activity. It's good, huh? Drinking tea and eating a bagel, sorry, no, I didn't do that right. Eating a bagel and drinking coffee have been transmitted for a long time and are present right now. Thus, the Buddha ancestors' vital activity of eating a bagel and drinking coffee comes to us. Insert whatever it is you do every day if you don't eat bagels. So what we do everyday activity, on the one hand we're doing it, on the other hand it's something we received. And every day, everything are Buddha's vital activity. So yeah, when you think about this stuff, I find myself wanting to say, and maybe you say to yourself too, okay, how do I do it? How do we make this true? How do we infuse like mindfulness and deep awareness into every moment of our day? And then you think about it a minute and you think, well, that doesn't feel right. Something I do or something I make happen. It's kind of like forcing myself on this world or something like that. Makes me think of that wonderful passage in his Genjo Koan essay about carrying the self forward to experience the world as delusion, and allowing the world to come forth and experience itself is enlightenment. So that's also about this. So there's something here about both understanding something that we forget and radically allowing it to be how it already is and always was and always will be, without our interference and without our manipulation, without our applying some extra something onto what's here. It's not about us, and we are in the middle of our own mandala. This business of everyday activity made me think of Norman saying one time, a long time ago, just stuck in my head, that one of the things that surprised me once he started practicing was how interesting his hands turned out to be. I got really fascinated, like, wow, they can do things and have feelings and can touch things. And if you think about it for a minute, like, hands are completely a miracle, right? Amazing. And so is everything else. And I don't think Norman set out to, I don't think he read in a book somewhere, practice Zen so that you can learn about the experience of having hands, like it just came up, Someone was just telling me that practicing more, they're crying more. Like, you never know what's going to come up as your everyday activity, as the manifestation of rice and tea, bagels and coffee, getting up, going to work, taking care of each other, applying the balm of kindness is Buddha's activity. Maybe it's more of a remembering, oh right, remembering something you always knew but somehow can't quite hold in front of you very well. Rediscovering the wonder of everything is eating rice and drinking tea. Not something we do, but something we feel, in our bones. So then Dogen, as he will want to do, goes on to offer a Zen story, a Zen koan, as his way of encouraging us to really study this deeply and maybe shake us up a little bit if we think we've already got this figured out, So after that innocuous paragraph about tea and rice and Buddhas, we have this story. Priest Daokai, who would later become abbot of Mount Dayang, asked Tozui, "It is said that the thoughts and words of Buddha ancestors are everyday tea and rice. Besides this, are there any words or phrases for teaching?" So Daokai here is the student, Tozui is the teacher. The student asked, "It's said that the thoughts and words of Buddha ancestors are everyday tea and rice. Besides this, are there any words or phrases for teaching?" Tozui, the teacher, replied, "Well, tell me, when the emperor issues a decree in her territory, does he depend upon emperors Yu, Tong, Yao, or Shun?" And as Daokai was about to open his mouth in response, Tozui covered it with his whisk and said, "While you were thinking, you've already received 30 blows." Daokai was then awakened. He bowed and began to leave. Tozui said, "Wait, Reverend." Daokai did not turn around, and Tozui said, "Have you reached the ground of no doubt?" Said it to his back. Daokai covered his ears and left the room. So these stories, of course, kind of make you a little batty, and a little intrigued, So let's walk through it a little bit here. The first thing that's notable, and many of them start this way, is the student really stepping up, really stepping forward to ask a question. it would be easy to think, and these are all monastics, maybe living in the monastery for years, often since they were boys, actually. And most of them are male in these stories. But stepping up to ask a really basic question, essentially laying it out there that you're not quite getting it, You've been doing the thing, you've been studying the stuff, but what are we doing here, And here, asking this question, it's said that our practice is nothing but everyday activity. It's said that our practice is everyday tea and rice, which must be where Dogen lifted that opening from. And then he says, besides this, are there any words or phrases for teaching? Are there any other teachings? Is that it? Really? Please, Doesn't seem like enough. And I always try to think about the context of these stories. These guys living in this monastic container, the very full schedule with many activities, many rituals. Some much as you might think, 3 or 4 periods a day in a normal day. And a whole lot of activity. I've been reading lately the in-depth manual that the Soto Zen Church published a while ago and got translated in the late 90s. And this is a crazy book. Truly awesome and overwhelming. It goes step by step through the monastic day, and then it has chapter after chapter about monthly ceremonies and annual ceremonies and how to do everything every second at the monastery. It's like, first, this officer gets up from the seat, turns to the right, makes this kind of bow, then enters the other hall through the south door on the right side with the left foot passing the threshold first, approaches the altar, then makes this kind of bow, then. I'm not kidding, it's really kind of intense, a thicket of detail. So this was the life in the monastery, very precise and detailed. What we do here is quite simplified, even more simplified once we ended up in the basement of a church. We'll probably add a few things, back at our place. Yeah. Maybe a lot of things. Maybe not that many. No. It still has to be doable by ordinary people. But I'm enjoying these manuals. I have had them for years, but I was intimidated, so now I'm gradually kind of working my way through. So detailed. And anyway, that would be the kind of stuff that they would be actually focused on in their day of practice. How to do all this stuff. The details of the practice were specific and precise. So that's their everyday tea and rice of Zen training. And in Zen monastic life, actually there's not all that much time for study or discussion of the Dharma the way we would think about it. And even the ceremonies that appear to have discussion of the Dharma in the ceremony, like you may have been to one of our Shuso ceremonies where the head student is asked questions and responds. Maybe you were there when Reisla or Desiree or Hana or earlier Shusos were in that seat. Beautiful ceremony. They really try to answer from the heart, and often when you're answering, you don't know where that came from, Probably the best things you say you forget by the end of the ceremony. But actually in Japanese traditional training, that's all completely scripted. It's all ritual. Even the words are the ritual, right? So it's specific which hand you use, and so it's specific what word you say. So this has been this monk's life for who knows however many years, And now he's asking the teacher, well, what else is there? So it's kind of gutsy, very vulnerable, actually. And so the teacher responds with a strange question, a Zen story kind of question. He asks him to tell him something. Tell me, when the emperor issues a decree, does he depend upon the ancient emperors Yu, Tong, Yao, or Shun? So these 4 names turned out to be legendary emperors that may or may not have ever existed, who each had particular qualities, notable qualities. I don't know what they all are, but. So when somebody, like an emperor, makes an important decision, presumably every decision an emperor makes is quite important, what do they depend on? Do they depend on some ancient worthy? Do they depend on what they heard? Do they depend on what they read in a book? Do they depend on getting somebody's approval? What do they depend on? In other words, what do you depend on, dear student, when you're trying to understand your life or make a decision? What do you depend on? And then we have this little play. As Daokai, the student, was about to open his mouth, Tozui reached out and covered his mouth with his whisk. You know those ceremonial whisks? You've seen Chris and I maybe wave them around. Sticks that in his face. And kind of shocks him into silence, and says, while you were thinking, you already received 30 blows. So supremely, the teacher sees that the student is trying hard to figure this out. Maybe the student's kind of staring off into space, and his face is kind of tense, and you can sometimes you kind of see the wheels turning in somebody's head, And the teacher just realizes right away, no. You're on the right track at all already. It's not going to do you any favors to let you say anything right now. And intervenes with a physical gesture. So this is not just words, right? This is interaction with bodies. Covering his mouth with the ceremonial fly whisk. And then he says this expression next. I don't know if he really needed to say this, but he did. While you were thinking you've already received 30 blows. This is a hard part of the Zen literature, this use of physical punishment as teaching, even as a metaphor. And in the story, Tozui doesn't hit his student, although sometimes they do. And we have no way of knowing if it was kind of a little tap in jest or really whacking them. Probably some of both, actually. And maybe we feel it's another culture and another time, but yeah, that's a difficult thing. How do we make sense of that? So receiving 30 blows means you're off, you're wrong. Usually. Sometimes it means the opposite. I was reading some comments on this Dogen piece by my friend in Portland, Domyo Burke. This is from her great website, the Zen Studies podcast, which I really recommend. She wrote, or she said, and then transcribed, traditionally a student receives blows when she or he does something wrong. On the other hand, we talk in Zen about aspiring to be a student worthy of being beaten. It's like a traditional phrase. And if you're not making because if you're not making mistakes, you're not really trying. So Dalkai could not slink away in shame. His question is sincere, and Tozui isn't just pointing out his error. He's trying to point to something fresh and to bring something new for Dalkai to experience. A physical interruption of verbal dialogue, common in these stories, might seem random or inscrutable or even insulting. But think about how a physical act can bring you back into your body, into your direct experience. You're arguing your point, and then your friend comes over and gives you a big hug. You stop. You're anxious about something. Someone puts a cup of tea in your hands and just suggests, please have a sip. So I thought that was a nice way to think about this. The teacher saying, it's okay, stop. And this did it, this changed the student's understanding. And we don't really know what to make about this line that's in these stories either. Then he was awakened, as if he wasn't already. But something got more clear. Some feeling was there. Something shifted in his heart. And he was grateful, quietly bowed, started to leave, which is also kind of beautiful. Not like, oh my God, I got it. You know, just like, oh. And Tozuo wasn't done, though. He says, wait a minute. He doesn't turn around. And Tozuo says, have you reached the ground of no doubt? This is kind of a checking question. How like deep is your understanding? And I think Tozuo approved of Daokai's response, which was, this time he didn't try to say anything, right? He didn't turn around and say, wow, it's like this, you know? Just with his body said, I'm out of here, teacher. So this is to help us explore something about everyday practice. So what might that be about? Dogen gives a comment on why he picked this story. Maybe this will help, maybe not. From this story, clearly understand that the thoughts and words of Buddha ancestors are their everyday tea and rice. Ordinary coarse tea and plain rice are Buddha's thoughts, ancestors' phrases. Because Buddha ancestors prepare tea and rice maintain Buddha ancestors. Accordingly, they need no powers other than this tea and rice. They have no need to use powers as Buddha ancestors. Investigate and study the expression, does he depend upon emperors Yu, Tong, Yao, or Shun? Leap over the summit of the question. Besides this, are there any words or phrases for teaching? Try to see whether leaping is possible or not. Leap over this question. So are our decisions our own to make? Is our understanding our own? Are we dependent on others? Is it me? Is it you? Is it all of us? And what is this? Is there anything else? And interestingly, Dogen tells us that the best way to work with this question, this underlying uncertainty, is to leap over the whole question. Maybe you took Reizel's Genjo Koan class. You remember her demonstrations of leaping clear. She jumped out of her chair. So practice is everyday activity, but don't be so pat, you know. That's not enough to just be like, yeah, my practice is my everyday activity. How are you doing? There's more to it than that. And don't try to make it all special, like some ancient master, ancient emperor. Whoa. That's reaching for something. That's adding something. Unnecessary. So it's not ordinary, it's not special, it's not ordinary, it's not special. Leap clear of all these categories. That's Dogen's suggestion to us. Here's my friend Domyo again. She really lands this, I think. As she wrote, for myself, I find that wrestling with the language and imagery in Dogen's Kajo, this essay, helps me notice how I tend to vacillate between two mindsets about my practice. In the first, I think, I've got this. My life, such as it is a pretty good blend of conscious effort and just taking care of everyday activities. I try to be attentive most of the time, and that's all I can or should expect. That's pretty good. But the second mindset says, I've just gotten lulled into thinking I'm practicing. But I'm actually on autopilot and letting the precious moments of my life slip away. I regard much of each day as ordinary tea and rice and feel disconnected from my deepest aspirations. I need to turn up the heat on my practice by engaging with Dharma with a capital D. And then she concludes, my life and practice feel most vital when I'm not caught in either of these mindsets. Not thinking my ordinary everyday life is it, nor thinking something's lacking. Instead, it feels like eating and drinking tea in the manner of Buddhas is done right here, right now, with complete and fresh humility. So, I hope this stuff's helpful somehow. That's the first half of Dogen's essay on everyday activity. Maybe if I take this up again later, it'll be fun because next he quotes from Shirto's Grass Hut Hermitage poem, which we have enjoyed, and similarly twists that around in a fun way. Well, I don't know, maybe the best way to do everyday practice is just to keep wondering what that is, huh? You know, what is everyday practice? I guess I'm already doing. I might keep practicing. May our intentions equally extend to every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Illusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless.